5 billion phones is the statistic that is being constantly flashed up that will eventually be the number. The number of people and number of phones that will be out there in this world will be 5 billion. Nothing has ever reached that number. In fact, John Bain, who had given a keynote today, said that nothing comes even close, not even eyeglasses, nothing that you have ever carried on yourself has ever hit 5 billion. But we're about to hit that number with phones. And yet, like I said in that opening, we're more vulnerable than ever. All the things that you have in your pocket right now constitute, I mean, how many of you would be comfortable right now giving away your phone to somebody for 1 hour with their password unlocked? You'd be okay with giving it away for 1 hour? You have a very boring life, for sure. If you're actually willing to give it away for 1 hour, you've got to improve your social life. You can never give it away for 1 minute also. No chance. Okay, but imagine if that's what a hacker could do, and do it without your knowledge, do it in seconds, and do it immediately sucking up every part of your data, all your messages, including the deleted ones. We're about to discover today what is the level of vulnerability. Is this something that just the media keeps hyping up because it's a great headline to give, right? Your smartphone is a ticking time bomb. It's great. You will see that story, you will read that story if it's in a newspaper. But is it really true? How vulnerable are we? I've got an absolutely fantastic panel. So let's get them on the stage first, and then let's get deep into this conversation. You heard him right now. Alex Thurber, Senior Vice President, General Manager, Mobility Solutions, BlackBerry. Alex, very good of you to join us. You can take this seat right here. Next up is Jiten Jain, CEO of Voyager Infosec. There are many other ways to describe what he does, including the cliche of ethical hacker, right? You don't use that anymore? Okay. Come. Yeah, sure. Next up is Rajan Matthews, Director General, Cellular Operations Association of India. Please give him a big hand. Rajan, thank you so much. Come. Also joining us is Vivek Reddy, Senior Advocate and BJP Spokesperson. Give him a big hand, please. Vivek, thank you so much for coming in. Come, why don't you take this? And at any given moment through the time that we start off with this, joining us will be Karuna Nandi, the advocate for the Supreme Court of India. Hopefully she'll be on her way at any point now. So I'm just going to quickly ask one question, both to my panel as well as to everybody out there with a show of hands. How many of you have taken a Facebook quiz which basically asked you questions to find out how closely you resemble a particular celebrity in Hollywood? How many of you have taken that quiz? Okay, you're lying, right? Okay. You didn't take that quiz? You didn't take that quiz? Okay. How many of you here have taken a Facebook quiz ever? No. Okay, one person. So one person is truthful, the other three are lying. Let's find out now from the rest of the audience. How many of you people have ever taken a Facebook quiz? Okay, keeping those hands up, which is 95%. Do you realize that each of you have already been hacked, right? So you and every friend of yours, that data was already sucked out. So those millions that have been going through this entire situation in India, and most of you have done it on your mobile phone. So the amount of data that came from within is just the start of what we eventually may end up with. So let's get started with where we are. Rajan, I'm going to start off with you. The mobile phone, and of course, the incredible organization that you're part of takes this entire thing forward of how much we use our mobile phone, how we are wedded to the phone, how we take it to bed every single night, right? I'm not asking you whether you do or not. That's not my first question at all. It'll be my last question.
I already have my 2 kids, so it's okay.
Oh, you're done, right? Okay, all right. You can take the bed you can take the phone to bed. How bad do you think the situation is? The first question I always get is, we're just creating panic. So my first question to all of you is going to be, is it as bad as we make it seem?
It's pretty widespread, because if you ask this congregation or this audience, how many of you folks have smartphones, just about everybody will raise their hand. And if you ask the same crowd, how many of you folks have a firewall installed, a sort of a software that protects you in some form? Only about 2%, we've tried this over and over again. 2% say They'll lift up their hands and they say, we have some type of a
Something
protection.
that
That's
actually
it.
is
And they're
security.
carrying a advanced computer in their pockets, which they would never think of doing on a laptop or on desktop, but they feel completely compelled on a smartphone to not have that type
But
of
why
protection.
do you think that is?
That's-
Why is it just because it's in your hand, you feel it's very personal and protected? Because I've got people who've actually answered this saying, but it's always with me, so how is it insecure?
And I think it's this transition from voice to data. I think
Okay.
people, when they've used the voice, never had to bother about this type of intervention and hacking and all of this. And all of a sudden they think, hey, moving over to a same phone and it's data enabled, all of a sudden should give me the same types of protections and lack of vulnerability, which is not the case because you've really moved and taken a quantum leap from two very different networks. And I think that's what causes this false sense of safety and not doing the essential hygiene that is required when you're in this new data networked environment.
Right. I think that's a great point. We just feel we've moved from, we were only making voice calls and sending SMSs. We believe it's the same. Jitin, how bad is the situation?
I think it's pretty worse because the entire landscape of security threat has changed in the last 10 years from those dinosaur-sized computers to laptops, then to tablets, and today to mobile phones. That's the most lucrative option for hackers. A, because if you are clocked by a ransomware on your computer, and compared to a mobile phone, you're more likely to pay a higher price for unlocking your mobile phone.
Correct.
Number two, the quantum of personal data you can steal from a mobile phone is much more lucrative than from a PC, because if you hack a computer, at best you can find some documents or photos maybe, but if you take over a smartphone, your entire gallery, contact book, locations of your entire lifetime, what all accounts you have, screenshots, WhatsApp, and you're looking, your life will be taken off like a live web camera, and a hacker would have everything you do. And, things you can't even imagine, you wouldn't ever remember in your life, that where were you 3 years back on this day at this point of time. But the location log, everything can be stolen. And it's more easier to hack a smartphone than to hack a PC today. Okay. And it's courtesy Rajan and his colleagues who are offering free unlimited data, so people keep everything on. We don't mind.
So don't take all these free offers. We're struggling here.
So in India, the learning lesson is that if something is free, if a product is free, remember we are the product.
Yeah. So I wonder if it actually is for all networks also, right? Tell me, is this really true? Do you also believe in everything that you're now seeing, the kind of people that you're interacting with? Is it as bad as it seems? I mean, the first two people have said it's even worse.
I think data with smartphone is a big threat. And as we move on, if you look at the sort of beast that we are dealing with, there are two big giants there, which we have to be wary of when we use a smartphone. One is the companies to whom we give data, because they are out selling data, which is as good as hacking. Because nobody comes in and hacks, but the data is sold and they use it. This is one. The second thing is actual hacking. When you look at the first beast, that is when the companies sell data, we actually sign a consent form where we give away the entire data. It is sold virtually. There is nothing, our whole soul, dignity, our right to life, our privacy, everything is sold to them. So that's a dangerous terrain. But when we look at the app perspective, the company that deals with the app, it is not there for free. So they use our data, they harvest our data, and that's how they make money, big money. It's like a symbiotic relationship. I give my data, and then I take the facilities of Facebook, and that's how I start conversing with the world, and I use it for various purposes. But there's one hitch here, one difficulty here. It's like the British who came here, and initially they asked Jahangir for a small ferment to trade, and finally they gobbled us up. So the larger perspective is that what began as a symbiotic relationship, now today is enough to gobble us. And how we deal with that threat legally by creating a legal architecture, the whole principle should be that I must own my data. I should be the owner of my data. How do we assure that? How do we reach that? That's
the
big
legal
challenge.
architecture is especially interesting, and we'll get into that in more detail, because legal architecture and legal architecture in India, I think, is something that we must explore. Does it even exist? And do we know what we can really do? Alex, I think you're a very interesting person to have on this panel, because That's what BlackBerry really stands for, right? The fact that you've been trying to tell people all very well that you're so excited about the mobility space and everything else, but look into the privacy. And a lot of people talk about hacking because, like I said, it makes for great headlines. But the privacy factor is sometimes forgotten. So what are your thoughts? And once again, the final question, is it as bad as we make it?
Well, I think that my fellow panelists here brought up some very important issues that are key to this, but I think there's one additional one. There definitely will be more widespread hacking of phones. We certainly saw that happen through the PC industry. We're already seeing that now on phones, and that will continue to grow. But I think one of the other nefarious parts, particularly when we talk about privacy, is the information that's collected by apps that you're not even aware of. So it's one thing if you go onto Facebook or Instagram and you sign up and you hopefully understand what you're signing up for. And you can go on the website, as you should, and double check what type of information they have about you. It's fascinating. But there are many applications out there which collect data about you and upload them to websites that you have no idea it's going on. And I think that's one of those key areas of privacy that is so important. At BlackBerry, we built an application called Detect, which actually allows you to see what applications on your phone are accessing what parts of your phone. So not only your photographs or perhaps your email or storage, but what's accessing your location, what's turning on your microphone or your camera. And you'd be surprised at the type of applications that have permission to do things like that that you may have no idea about. And that's where we really get into the deep issues on privacy that I think people aren't even aware of yet.
Okay, great. So I think the understanding of how bad it is, I think, while we've taken about maybe 7 minutes to go through the panel, I'll just say it in one word: it's terrible. So now that we know that the situation is terrible, let's get down to doing something which is a multi-choice. Okay, so I'm going to throw out some things. You spoke about apps, you spoke about some of the other things that we are signing away on our own. Karuna Nandi joins us. Give her a big hand. Karuna Nandi, Advocate, Supreme Court. Karuna, we want to know, you're late. Is it because your phone got hacked on the way, or is it...
My phone is secure, I'll explain.
Okay, all right, okay. Okay, just pick up the mic. Karuna, we were just going through the first round down, where we were discussing the vulnerability of a smartphone, especially from hacking, from loss of data, from privacy, from everything that is being pulled out. Is it just a lot of media amplification because it makes for such great headlines? Or is it as bad as it is? Or is it worse? The first four have said it's much worse than being reported. Let's find out from you.
Okay, clearly we're with people who know what they're talking about. It's much worse than you think. And the three things you need to be careful of are intermediary companies, the companies that own your apps, the companies who own the phone even, because of backdoors, and you need to also be careful of governments and governments around the world. And the third thing that people don't think of as much as they should is you need to be careful of a pickpocket, because there are very, very simple things you can do. For example, you can put a password in, you can lock your phone. The surprising number of people just don't do that, because they don't think it's necessary. But think about what's in your phone. Your phone is actually an extension of you nowadays, right? It's got your banking app very often. Those tend to be quite secure. It's got your email. Use two-factor authentication if you're using Google at the very least. It's got your photos. It's got all sorts of things that you're already logged into. So,
Messages, I think, would be one of the most vulnerable areas.
Well, exactly.
Your entire communication, like when you said, your phone's an extension of yourself. Your conversations with people is, I think, the most important extension of yourself. So messages make a huge difference out there. Right?
And you think they're encrypted, right? So a lot of people go to WhatsApp and think they're fine, and they are. WhatsApp, of course, is encrypted. It's got pretty strong encryption. It's 256-bit, I think, still. The trouble with WhatsApp, for instance, is that the metadata is something that they share, right? Now, you may be sending messages on WhatsApp, and then a related ad will come up on another portal. Now, so it's not that they're reading the messages, the content themselves, but there is an algorithm that's reading your messages, right? So there's Wire, there's Signal. But the trouble, of course, with those is that there isn't enough widespread adoption to
the number
make
of people
it so
using
attractive.
that. True. So, well, interesting. I was about to do a multi-choice one, but just before that, because you brought this up, let's just talk about how good encryption is when companies actually claim it. And once you find vulnerabilities and companies claim that we've taken care of the vulnerabilities, we've closed the back doors, how truthful are they being? These are the two big topics that have been making headlines. So let's start with the first one. How many of you have a WhatsApp group? Maybe it would be easier if I was to say how many didn't. You could at least keep your hands down then. How many of you would know that you may have great encryption for one-to-one, but your WhatsApp group can still be read? How many of you knew that? So some of you have read the recent headlines. An old Samsung phone was used to actually read WhatsApp groups. Jiten, do you want to take us through what exactly is and how does that work? And how can each of them read other friends' groups now?
I will do that for the sake of WhatsApp policy terms. But I want to tell you one thing. I think BlackBerry knows the best. Whenever you encrypt, the law enforcement follows. So no encryption can be foolproof, number one. Second, even if a thing is end-to-end encrypted, endpoints can always be broken, which is the biggest threat in most of the apps that who claim to have end-to-end encryption enabled, but most of them are vulnerable at endpoint level, and they get compromised and entire data is read.
Can you explain to everybody
second
what
issue
you mean by
with WhatsApp
endpoint?
Second issue with WhatsApp is, so suppose you have a WhatsApp database which you think is encrypted and nobody can ever read, but it is possible to read your WhatsApp chats by just porting your WhatsApp chat to an older version of WhatsApp, stealing your key, and then decrypting your entire chats. And your key remains same for your entire life till the time you have the same phone number. Absolutely. So the point, what we are trying to say that, and obviously, apart from this, there are fake companies who offer that we are end-to-end encrypted, but in reality, they are not. So don't go by the word. Never put anything on social media or this instant chatting applications which you never wanted to share with anyone else. Don't go by the encryption standards. 128-bit were broken 5 years back, 256 got broken. Now people claim that we have got 1024 AES and all. Someday they might also be broken. But that data will be stolen on that day, it will be irreversible damage. So you will not be secured that day. For example, the permissions you gave to those social media apps 7 years ago, today they are coming to haunt you back in your elections. So the point is that your digital footprint can never be removed. And the encryption is, I think, in reality, at some point of time, it's at 1%, I would say it's a myth. It may be good for 99% eavesdropping, but it doesn't guarantee you 100% security.
Okay, all right. So let's do the multi-choice now.
And I want to bring you one very interesting point, as Karuna pointed out. The new WhatsApp policies, terms of agreement and privacy policy, if you read, they have written a beautiful line that in ordinary cases, we do not retain and store your chats. In ordinary cases. But we can when it comes to the violation of our terms and conditions and to help law enforcement agencies. So I think that speaks volumes about what is possible and what is not possible.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the greatest problem. Every one of us thinks that the problem stems from this or that. So I'll read out a list of about 5 or 6. I just want a top 2 from everybody because that, I think, isolates the problem even better. So is it a very, very porous and poorly written operating system? Is it the sensors on our phones that give away so much about us? Is it specifically the GPS because it becomes the greatest problem for location and reveals everything about us out there? Is it the apps, as has already been spoken by Karuna, by Alex, and by everybody else, and the kind of permissions they take away? Is it going to be malware and phishing because that's now maybe the greatest single business any human being can get into? Is it passwords or the lack of them, as Karuna said? I am shocked to see that in the top 100 passwords is a cloud. The password still remains, the word password still remains the highest used password in the world. And the next one is 1, 2, 3, 4. So geniuses, of course, all of us that are actually doing that. And you'll be shocked with the other 98 also. So the top 100 are truly terrible. So is it passwords and just the way we use them? Is it poor encryption or none at all, fake encryption? Or is it going to be just the way the software is written in the zero-day exploits? Rajan, you have to do a top 2.
So I'd say apps, and the second one, which you haven't listed, is carelessness from the user. Okay. 80% of the problems start from the user, not from all of this other stuff.
Okay, all right.
I think entire ecosystem is broken, but if I have to choose 2, I think it's operating system and the applications to install on your mobile phones.
Okay, so it pretty much
So
the
if
whole
I
phone,
tell you in
mean,
two lines, we had a research, two researchers are presenting a beautiful research of 2 years in Amsterdam today, and they have reverse engineered thousands of operating systems, custom operating systems of mobile phones. And what they have discovered is that majority of manufacturing companies who manufacture mobile phones, they claim they have given you all the patches for security vulnerabilities, they gave you the updates, but when the code was reverse engineered, it was found that they were all lying and vulnerabilities still remained and they did not give any patch. So I think it was simply fooling your customers by saying that we have patched everything and lying about to them and then selling your devices. So I think that remains the most fundamental flaw in our system, that because it's a bad operating system, the second umbrella of security, which is like an antivirus or anti-malware or a firewall you may say, I think on mobile phone, antiviruses are dead. If you look at most of the spying applications which have been caught, I mean, we caught many from India, which were run by ISI, they were given all green by top 64 antiviruses in the world. None of them were able to detect any suspicious behavior. So to say that, antiviruses or, behavior engines or some sort of firewalls can save us, no, sorry, because the entire OS, concept of permission model is broken. You yourself give them permission, and you would not believe that a spying application like Smash App or many other applications, WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, they take exactly the same set of permissions to do the job. One is giving you a chatting application, another one is spying. So it all depends on the intent. So as long as you are giving them the permission, no antivirus can come and help you.
Okay, all right. So really encouraging first two panelists about how the worst of us. Okay, your top two.
If I can put it simply, one is the operating system, because that's the foundation. And the second is the apps, because that's where most of the data is loaded. And if that can be hacked, that is vulnerable to data leak, then it's a serious security problem. But the larger issue is the ecosystem. Okay. If you look at both of these, it's like technology has moved at such marched ahead so fast that we are still catching up with the law. And it's still like the jungle law, where anybody can get out of the bush and then finish a person, then walk away happily. So that jungle law needs to be regulated.
Do you realize that the two analogies you've given, one is the British invasion of India, and the second is warriors and jungle laws, and we thought we were a very, very forward world of technology. So great that we've got two incredible examples from you. Alex, I see as soon as everybody else started talking about operating systems as the main problem, you were smiling all through, because this is almost music to your ears, right?
Well, it is, and I have to say, I would agree with one of my earlier colleague. I think we are responsible for a lot of these problems, to be honest, and I'll put myself in there as well. And I think there are two main issues. The first is we're not careful when we use our phones. If I walk around, I live in Portland, Oregon, which is a very safe town, but there are still parts of that town that I would not go to at 2 in the morning, and I know that. So I'm careful about where I go on a day-to-day basis or in the evening. But it's shocking to me how people don't pay any attention to the bad parts of the internet that they go to and the behavior that they do on those, which opens your phone up or your computer up to vulnerabilities.
So Alex, is it mainly just porn? Because then almost everything that everybody's doing out here is gone for the
Alex
whole day.
is anti-porn.
Yeah,
I didn't say porn, so I'm not going to bring that up at all. But I think in general, it's the old story of if something is too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
If somebody's offering you something for free, there's got to be they have to get paid somehow. So there's a catch behind it. The other is, I think we all have to be willing, and I will admit I'm a manufacturer here, we all have to be willing to pay a little bit more for security. Yeah. And it's amazing to me, we're not talking about a lot of money, but for $5 or $10, you can get a device, and this is not just phones, this is the Internet of Things, this is everything, that adds major elements of security to truly protect you. And when you start understanding what risks you are taking on a day-to-day basis, I think it's important that we're all willing to go, all right, if I have two exactly similar devices, one has security, one does not, I'll pay an extra $5 to get that unit with security, particularly when we assume that I'm going to have that with me for years. And so over the course of that time, it becomes a very small amount of money.
Okay, all right, Karuna. Top two out here, and then anything else.
Yeah. I'm glad actually that you have someone from BlackBerry on the panel if you were going to choose industry, because BlackBerry, and no conflict here, I don't represent them, nothing. But BlackBerry is actually better on security and privacy than a bunch of other, other smartphones, right? But of course, in terms of market share, unfortunately, it's not as. Look, a lot of people have spoken about operating systems, and I would agree with that. On apps, Mr. Matthews, I think, was saying that people are not careful enough. Look, I have been reading diligently terms of service of every stupid app that I use, right? I'm a lawyer. I'm in the business. I advise tech companies, right? I doubt, and my colleagues, my team is somewhere here, and it's too large to ask them, but I doubt they do. So even lawyers don't, right? Now, I think the point that someone was making, that I think Alex was making, that was revealed very usefully in the Cambridge Analytica leaks, right? Is that if you are getting it for free, you are the product. We were just talking about how your smartphone is an extension of yourself. You are the product. And so I think the shocking thing that, of course, what was revealed in the hearings yesterday and day before was that it's not like Facebook was necessarily sticking to their terms of service entirely either. But the problem is that even the terms of service pre-2014 were just so ridiculously broad that would you, for example, in a place that, in a physical space, would you go somewhere and say, not only can you have my personal data, but you can have all my friends' personal data, go for it. Would you do that? No, right? So I am going to pick a third, which is the law. And there's a real misconception that the law protects our privacy. There was a lot of excitement over our privacy judgment, the 9 judges, and I've been citing it in court in various different contexts, right? And you're right to be excited. Everyone, we are right to be excited because it's a very important judgment. But it's very broad, it's very abstract. We don't have a proper privacy law. So there is the B.N. Sri Krishna committee that has pretty much, government people and one government-friendly policy unit sitting on it. And that has, under a lot of pressure now, finally released a draft law. And at the moment, they were clear that it's a draft, but at the moment it's deeply inadequate. The IT Act in Section 69, the Information Technology Act, says that government can, in the interests of the sovereignty of India, and I quote, right, and a number of other heads, which are just in the Constitution, so it's really abstract, can get your data. Can get your data. So there are no controls on that. There's a Supreme Court judgment that says that to tap your phone, that they have to go to a review committee at the Home Ministry. It's a 1997 judgment. But it's an in-house thing. To get your other data, there's very, very little that government has to do. And so, I think Jitin was saying that 256-bit encryption is, easy for government to crack if they're really keen, And so, in fact, the point is that they wouldn't even need to crack it. All they have to do is ask you to produce your phone, and there you are. Reveal your passwords. You can lock your thing, just while we're on it, don't use face recognition and don't use fingerprint. It's less cool to type in your password, but that's the most secure way to do it. But this is the thing that we don't worry about enough. And we're talking a lot about smartphones here, and I think the question I was thinking about when you raised it was your smartphone, is it the biggest threat to security and privacy? And I don't think it's the biggest threat. I actually think Aadhaar in some ways is a much bigger threat, And
so we've changed
I don't have Aadhaar.
I have my graphics department.
Have you linked your phone with Aadhaar?
Slash.
I don't have an Aadhaar.
I'll put a slash to it and say smartphone / Aadhaar is the biggest threat right now.
One interesting point she's bringing out, and I'm in complete agreement that, in Indian law, we do not have a concept of informed consent. So if you take an example, like when you smoke a cigarette, you buy a cigarette, there is a big warning given on the cigarette packet that if you smoke cigarette, you might have cancer. And despite of that, you want to smoke, so be it. So that's informed consent. But what most of these apps are doing is like a trick consent. So you want to play a quiz game, give me your data to play this game, but they don't want to tell you that this data will be, taken not only for now, but for the next, 20, 30 years
Plus,
of your
it's
life.
an all or nothing.
And you look at the Uber case, We gave them the permission to track our location because we wanted to book a cab. And when they were caught, tracking your location, even after 15 minutes you have left the cab, they said, oh, we were doing it for your security. So that's called trick consent, that you take the consent once, but they don't tell you whether they're going to read your SMS for once to just read an OTP or read your every SMS for the rest of your life. So there is a problem with these apps that, the permissions what we give, we do have no idea. And I think BlackBerry or other, manufacturers can solve that. We want to know at OS level that once we given permission, how many times it has been utilized, at what time it has been utilized. I want to know if WhatsApp is reading my SMS late in the night. But we have no way to figure out how many times my SMS API or a camera API or a mic API is accessed. So right now, you only give a consent once and you're done for the rest of your life. I think that has to change.
There's if I may come in very quickly, there's a solution that there's a group called iSpirit in Bangalore that has proposed. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Yeah. So it's very interesting, right? I think it's possible that the solution to this has got to be legal, of course, but the law and technology always law is always trying to catch up with technology, and that's the way it's always going to be, right? But there's a possible technological solution to these consent issues, these informed consent issues. And one possible solution is that if you're on a particular site, right? So for example, if you're on Facebook, you have a pop-up box that pops up prominently, and says, these are the companies that are tracking your data. This is the data that is being tracked. This is the data that is being stored, and this has to be mandated by law, of course. This is the data that's being stored, and buttons right there to revoke it, not hidden away somewhere.
So you're saying for each thing, which is what I'm saying, the all or nothing principle of all apps is that if you actually say no to all the permissions they're asking, it's not that I will not give you permission for 1, 2, 3, I can give it for 4 or 5, it's all or nothing.
Yes.
You're actually asking for a breakdown even further.
I'm asking for a simple breakdown. A simple breakdown that doesn't take a tech lawyer to go through every single app, A simple breakdown that can get the average consumer to
actually understand what they're giving away,
Precisely.
what they're getting. Vivek?
Yeah. I think I heard what Karuna said and what Jitin said also. They're right in a way. This consent now in the European Union, if I'm right, that's what the new regulation says of 2016. And that's the European Union regulation is the most, that's the stereotype, that's the highest that we have achieved in this area.
That sets the bar, okay.
Yes, that sets the bar. And there they have this informed consent, which is in a very upgraded format. And they have the consent to be split also, so that we disclose, we say to what we give consent to be used by the app company. This is one. The second grade that they bring about is that you are the owner and you have a right of erasure. So you can decide when you want to erase it.
Owner of what? The data?
Owner of the data,
Owner of
your
the
data, whatever is your total data. And then the third thing that they do is, they have the option, suppose in this symbiotic relationship, anybody tries to kill you or, tries to take away, gobble the entire data, you can just relocate the data to another app, which is a rival or a competitor.
Data portability.
Data portability. So that also is permissible. So far as Aadhaar and app distinction is concerned, which Karuna brought, I think I need to clarify here and correct me if I'm wrong, because what I feel is that in apps such as messengers or in apps such as Facebook, we have very deep information regarding our personal lives. It's a reflection of us, as Karuna said. But Aadhaar is linkages. What Aadhaar is if you link it to your bank account, it does not mean Aadhaar has access to your account and goes into your account details. What it merely says is that this is the account number that is linked to Aadhaar, and therefore any other person with Aadhaar with the same account number is found out, is detected. And ultimately what it adds to is, it answers a compelling state interest, because there are so many people with unaccounted wealth, and they have kept it in Benami accounts. And how does the state trace it? It only asks for a linkage, that's all. But the penetration is not into your account details at all.
Okay.
So this is
Penetration
how...
One second, I know what's going to... Karuna, one second. So ladies and gentlemen,
life to Facebook. What
ladies and gentlemen, before I'm going to leave the rest of us are leaving the stage. We're leaving Vivek and Karuna now because we'll see you at 8 o'clock.
Two lawyers are always...
But Rajiv, one thing that I want to say is that, here we are sitting, well-educated, and all of this. Please remember the 80% of the folks who all of this consent business, when a thing pops up aren't going to, care or understand because,
simplify it,
yeah,
you
but
know?
I'm saying is
It's
that,
the green button they see, it's the color they see, or the tick mark they
Yeah,
see.
so
They're not going to read anything.
We have a new concept now, Benami data by these third countries which have stolen them. So we need to run them down.
Well, yeah. So I'm saying is that I think we've got to look at how, when we connect the 1.1 billion people of this country, many of them vernacular, all of this type. How do we get down there? It's all fine to talk about all of this good fancy stuff and things popping up and you clicking here and all of this.
Mr. Matthew, we need to start somewhere.
No, we
right?
agree. Yeah, but I'm saying is that
because at the moment we are nowhere.
Yeah, but I'm
so I
saying
agree with you that we need to get that level
deeper. But start there because I'll tell you, we are going to be penetrating that level. That's where the vulnerabilities are. Like you said, you only have to crack it at the weakest chain link, right?
To come back to the topic, I want to talk about a demo we did in a conference 2 years back. So I hope every one of us has charged our mobile phones at some point of time using some public charging station or laptop, right?
Yeah.
How many of you have charged your mobile phone apart from your home? 90%. So we did a demo. So we put a charging station in our hackers conference. It has all sort of pins available. And below that, there was a star written that, your data might be collected for analytics.
And it was written there on the charging station.
Yeah, nobody, read that. So they put their phone on the charging station. The only difference in the charging station was that the electricity was not coming from an electrical plug, it was coming from a laptop. So we copied their data. And when we gave the demo, the person shouted that, how dare you steal my data? I said, you gave the consent. So next time you go to airport, you go to any shopping mall, when you're charging your phone, be very careful because the plug may not be coming from an electrical plug, it may be coming from a laptop. And in case your keypad is unlocked, your entire data can be stolen.
Okay, and I just want to inform everybody that as you walked into this room, every single phone of yours has also gone through the same thing because Jiten also put up a Wi-Fi network and has hacked all phones, right? So forget about all the data that you had.
Now I'll be selling you
he has
the
all your
ads.
pictures. Okay, let's truly come back to the topic now. So they say that it usually takes an incredible event for everybody to wake up. And at this present moment, we've become very complacent with our mobile phones because, like we said, it's an extension of us, and therefore, if we feel we're secure, our phones are secure. It is something that we all live with. What do you think we need now to shake everybody up that this entire room and the rest of the world finally says, I will not use my mobile phone like I've always used it. I will start taking precautions. The precautions we'll take one step at a time. But right now, will it be a ransomware attack where you wake up one morning, as always, first thing in the morning, you try and check your social media or your messages, and there's a small message out there, a frozen screen that says, I own your phone now, and send me 1 Bitcoin, and otherwise it's frozen. Will it need an attack? Will it maybe take down 10, 15 million people for the rest of the world to wake up? Or is there any other way? Does it need a disaster for a wake up?
So we all are motivated by disasters, but I'll tell you, it's not going to happen now. It's when the IoT stuff comes online.
Okay.
All right, you're driving your car.
Maybe you're saying it'll also happen because I truly am predicting the fact that what I've said could happen.
Yeah, I think the folks who are going to try and get some type of a ransom is they'll wait till you're interconnected to a greater number of things.
So your whole house and car all
your house,
comes
your
in
car, your appliances and everything, and then you've got this multiplicity. Then it's really valuable, right? Because you can back up stuff, you can do all of these things to retrieve your information, right? Most people are relatively good at this, right? Okay. Apple gives you enough of whatever to back it up automatically. So I think this is when it'll really catch somebody's attention.
So wait for IoT and then the disaster happens, Jitin.
I don't think, we as a society in India, we are, ignorant about the cyber threats. I think we have become indifferent. We don't care if the data is hacked, if Aadhaar takes our data or the apps take our data. We only care if the money goes. So I think the day money is stolen from the banks in India, and it in a case where it cannot be recovered.
It's already happened, Jitin.
Yeah.
Monetization.
I was about to say, that's in our rearview mirror.
I'm talking about something like Bangladeshi bank keys.
Okay, on a very
when
large.
The money as the large quantum goes out of India,
and every single person here
money
loses
is deducted
10,000
from Indian bank accounts, from our personal accounts, then only we'll cry for data privacy and all those things. Till such time, we can only debate and discuss, and we'll deliberate.
As taxpayers, you've already paid the tax for the guys that are taking
I'm looking for a security business.
Vivek, what do you think? What do you think will wake up the world?
Yeah, I guess to add to what Jatin said, more than the people, more than people from outside countries looting our banks, through ransomware or something. We have human looters also, whom we have to be careful
We have enough talent in the country.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we touched on that. So larger issue is, we are now moving from electronics world to computer world, and now everything is more computer centric. Our evolution through technology is taking that stage. And you add artificial intelligence to it, to the computer ingredient, and then that makes ransomware a very powerful tool to disrupt systems. So the disruptive potential is immense, and unless we have proper security to shield it, every system is liable for ransomware attacks, and it could bring down the whole thing. To add to this is a larger danger that these servers are in international locations. There are, of course, international treaties, but still, the sheer location of these servers creates more danger to a country like ours.
Okay. Alex, what will it take?
I think there are a couple of things which are going to cause issues. One is, if you know somebody who is hacked, you're going to be much more aware of it. Think about if somebody in a physical break-in, if a friend of yours has their house broken into, you're much more aware of the locks on your doors and maybe getting an alarm system, etc. But I also think it's incumbent on the manufacturers like BlackBerry to drive security into every piece of the IoT ecosystem. And that includes your phone, it includes webcams, and it will include cars. And I think it's going to be a combination of industry with government regulation as well, and those two working together that's really going to push some of these changes. And then that way we can make it easier for the everyday consumer to have the security experience that they need.
Okay. Okay, Karuna. Predict the future.
Stories change minds. Data doesn't change minds. And there are a lot of stories coming out these days. The Cambridge Analytica story is a story that's pretty shocking. And I think the more that these stories emerge, the more I hope that people will wake up and understand how deeply invasive data theft is. And I'm going to call it data theft, whether it's government, whether it's companies, and whether it's a guy who ran up and stole your phone, right? And I will say that, I would love to hear, because this is an expert panel, one or two top points on how to secure one's phone, right? I would say, I'll go with the simple. Have a password, two-factor authentication, get a VPN, it's cheap. Make sure that you have patches, that you're downloading patches. Make sure that you buy from a vendor that is sort of sending you those patches, right? Those would be my top.
As Karuna has already started my last question, what's the top tip? And this is, I don't want to go into the complexity of what they could eventually do. That'll be great. And as one gets educated, taking step 1, step 2, then step 3, step 4 follows. What's the first 1 or 2 things that everybody could do right now, if they're not doing it, that you think could get them started on that journey?
So first of all, do business with reputable. It's not a fail-safe. None of these are fail-safe. With reputable companies which have much to lose when there's an expose. Because one, they have a greater...
So companies like Facebook or Google...
Yeah, but at least they, they have a vast array of exposure. But they were the quickest, right? Like he said, I mean, you've got all of these guys who are doing it and telling you they're doing all these fixes and nothing happens. When at least you've got some skin in the game when, a 10-point drop in your stock is worth billions, It gets their attention.
At least it gets people to wear a suit and go to a hearing.
Yeah.
But
And
what
at
about
least
the
it gets their
company?
attention to put a fix,
What about the company that makes an app that makes you look like a man or a woman?
Well, I mean, there's always those things. What I'm saying is that at the end of the day, people invest in brands and people trust brands. Why do the majority
You're
of people?
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we have no alternative to Facebook, how much ever they backstab us.
That's true. That's very true. Okay, so I'm actually going to open to audience. Maybe some of the tips can be given at that point because I've completely run out of time here. So open to audience, do have your hands up and let's get down. First I'll start off from here, then I'll come there. Okay, let's start with you. Catch. Okay. Yeah, you got the right side.
You have to break it open.
No. You got the right side. Just start speaking. Yeah, that's
Hello.
it. Yeah.
Hello, sir. My question is from Jiten, sir.
Okay.
So actually, I'm working for a startup. So just want to know, is it ethical or not? I'm creating a chat bot to engage a girlfriend for an hour everyday basis. I'm creating a chat bot to engage a girlfriend for an hour.
A
Every day.
girlfriend or whose girlfriend? See,
That's
ethical or not, we will know
that's
once
another
you know
question,
whose
sir.
girlfriend are you going to be engaging for 1.5 hours.
No, sir, hour. I think 2 hours or 3 hours.
Oh, even more. Okay.
Even more. Engaging a girlfriend with a chat bot.
As per Indian laws, is perfectly fine because this
Thank
issue
you.
was discussed at BPR&D conference or DGIG conference last year. That
He
you know
still hasn't
earlier
he's-
for all
he
the
still has
hacks,
not answered whose
for
girlfriend
all
it
the
is.
hacks, all the phishing, we were always trying to catch some individual. Tomorrow you may figure out that person who cheated you and the girl whom you have been chatting with for the last 4 or 5 years turned out to be a bot. Second,
Or a man.
it's a
Or a
public
man.
service. It's a public service. To keep engaged, knocking girlfriend that where you are, how are you, lunch khaya kya. So if it can reply, बहुत अच्छा खाना बना था, why not? It's a public service. I'm sure it's a good business model.
Thank you, sir. Could be a better startup idea in India.
All right, let's
I'm sure Rajiv uses one such app, I know.
Yeah, just check it to him, yeah.
My question may be more relevant to Jiten and Alex. Talking about putting up passwords and PIN, I think it's not something very difficult to break it by using the advanced systems like Kali if we have the access to device physically. So what is it that device manufacturers don't put up something which is mandatorily protecting the data, like some sort of encryption or some sort of other technology, which mandatorily protects consumers' data? Is it that the manufacturers are themselves hitting upon the data?
I think laws and regulations will not solve all the problems. Technology will not give you all the answers. Many operators, I mean, there are many phones, Samsung, OnePlus, BlackBerry. I know there are many such phones which offer you a device encryption. The feature is already available, just that people don't use it because they find it, annoying to unlock the device every time for 5-10 seconds. But things are available. But to say that, every problem can be solved by a, writ of law is not possible. It's very difficult to enforce such laws. You can't tell a Chinese or an American company what sort of encryption they should have. It's your choice. You want to pay for it, buy it.
But it can be done out of, like option, like MI phones have fingerprint scanners.
Yeah, to collect your data, I know.
Yeah.
Well, just speaking as a manufacturer, I would say that we talked earlier about working with reputable manufacturers, and this is an exact example. So at BlackBerry, on our new Android phones, because everything we're doing now is Android, every time you turn that phone on, everything on there is encrypted. It's very difficult to set it to not be encrypted. So we're very careful that the default setting is privacy. We also prompt you many times to set a device password. And now don't make it 1234 or 0000. But if you put a reasonable password on there, somebody will not be able to break into your phone. And we then actually harden the rest of the Android operating system around it so that you can't hack into that and use that as a way to decrypt your phone. So I would challenge most anybody that if you have a properly protected device that has proper encryption, you're in pretty good shape. And you just look at how the FBI has had challenges in the United States with smartphones trying to get that information out. It's not breaking encryption that allows your information to be floated around. It's people providing that information outside of the encryption schemes.
And I think you did not listen to one point that Karuna actually made, which is fingerprint scanners and Face ID may well be the worst security possible because if somebody wants to force the data out of you, they may not be able to force you to type a password. But this way, they can actually just hold the phone to your face or force your fingerprint onto a phone, and the phone opens anyway, whether it's law enforcement or anybody else. So they may be the worst security systems ever. Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, let's go with, oh, too many hands. I'll take 2 more questions max. So let's start with, Sony, the gentleman in the maroon shirt, I think. Yep. Yeah, do stand up, please.
Yeah, so as Ms. Nandi said, the recent stories that have broken out, so I feel let down as a citizen because of the threats with Aadhaar, and I feel let down as a consumer because of corporations like Facebook. So is there some technology which can assure me in a trustless environment that I am safe irrespective of bad actors? And do you think blockchain is a good enough solution for that?
Okay.
If I have to answer, no, blockchain is not the solution of every problem in life. It's just a buzzword. Sorry, it will not.
Of everything in life. Yeah, but he wants to know that how can he live a slightly more happier life?
The only way to live a happy life is by not keeping your extremely personal sensitive data in your smartphone. That's the only solution.
You think just make peace with the trustless environment? Is that?
No, I disagree with that. Look, I think the combination, and we can't be just resigned to the current state of affairs, which is a bit of a disaster, right? As this doom and gloom panel all seems to agree. But I think you're right to expect more. You're right to expect more of the technology that you use you're right to expect more of your government. But also I will add that we have to expect more of ourselves. So therefore, we have to make clear to the companies that are providing the tech, and we have to make clear to our governments that we need to do better, but we also need to do better ourselves. We need to do the simple things. We need to encrypt our phones. We need to get the VPNs. We need to do whatever we need to do, you know?
I will say, by the way, some companies spend a great deal of money on keeping things up to date. We were talking about the monthly patching process. I have many, many engineers who focus every single day on ensuring that those monthly Google security patches are put together and delivered. And we are the fastest company in the world that makes that happen. Now, I don't want to make this an advertisement for BlackBerry, but make sure any phone you buy, any Android phone you buy, that the manufacturer is committed to patching and patching on a regular basis.
No, without supporting him, I'll give him a +1, yes.
All right, we take the last question, the gentleman in the blue shirt, yes. You have the mic already, right? Isn't that a mic in your hand? In the sky blue shirt. Yeah, go for it. It's an encrypted, secure microphone.
It's linked to
Nobody
Aadhaar.
can hear you.
My question is to Jitin
Just
sir.
keep it a little closer to your mouth. Yeah.
My question is to Jitin sir and Alex sir. My question is, in a recent report, there was mentioned like 1,200 phones neglect or delay security patch updates, which they earlier mentioned while selling the phone. There were companies like Samsung, Sony, LG, and they promised regular security patch update, but after that, after selling the phone, they neglected and delayed the security patch updates.
I think this is the point we discussed, that sometimes company lie about security patches. At least Samsung is good. They simply outrightly said that we are not patching instead of lying. So, but I think this problem can be solved by the rate of law, where these companies are mandated and forced to provide security patches, and if they don't, they must compensate the customer by either giving them the full refund or whatever. But I think there has to be some provision and some regulation in the law where security has to be the responsibility of the manufacturer instead of just being left to the customer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Customer.
Well, I would just shade that a little bit.
Okay.
That I think that it's important that a manufacturer tell the customer what their patching schedule is and for how long they will be providing those patches, and then absolutely hold them to that statement. But the actual patching process is incredibly complicated, and mandating a particular arbitrary amount of time could be very difficult.
I had just a small point to add, because he's a manufacturer, in the light of the question that he was asking. Like you go to the airport and you're frisked totally, so your data collection also. Is there a possibility that the manufacturer can set in systems? I'm a lawyer, I don't know, but where the systems can notify you saying that this is the information of yours that goes out and is just being used in remote places in the world? Is it possible that you can give us such a signature?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we have an application within our the BlackBerry Android operating system that does exactly that. It is constantly scanning your phone and looking to see where you have security vulnerabilities, and it gives you a very easy red, yellow, green display to let you know what the situation is. And we're in the process of updating that to make it to implement more machine learning, so that it'll start to say, you're doing something that we think is going to get you in trouble, so please be aware.
That's a counter.
Okay, yes, okay, great. So I am completely out of time. In fact, I'm way over time. The only thing left is to declare a winner of the questions. We have 2 Fitbits to give away. So I'll leave one to the panel. Best question that you think came in. We had questions from the back and we had questions from the front. So why don't I leave the first one, Karuna? Tell me the best question that you thought came in from.
I like the guy who was expecting more of...
From life. Right? Right. Yeah. Shouldn't we all win for that? I mean, all right. So one Fitbit to, I think you're the one in the maroon shirt. Okay. And let me leave the second one to you, Mr. Matthews. Who else do you think had a great question?
I like the guy. Yeah, please use the network a lot more. We need the money.
All right, congratulations. Karuna, of course, described this panel as doom and gloom. She's partially right. I'd rather call it a very, very important wake-up call. Let's do this before the wake-up call is one where you wake up in the morning and you can't make calls. So let's do that right away. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Give them a big hand. This was an incredible panel. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, Jiten. Thank you, Vivek. Alex. Karuna, thank you so much. Thank you.